Get in, lads. Welcome to the Game Football Podcast. My name is Elijah, and today I'm going to be covering the first two games of the third round of the Asian World Cup qualifiers. This is going to be our first official video on the AFC as a whole. We've done a couple of videos on the Philippines before because I am Filipino, but this is going to be the first one covering AFC as a whole, and I'm really, really excited. I've been watching every single game to lead up to this point to give you guys my thoughts, my review, my recap, whatever, of what happened in the first two games. So I'm really excited. But before I get into it, two things. Number one, if you don't watch the AFC, what are you doing? You need to watch the AFC because this is without a doubt one of the most entertaining bouts of football in the world right now, especially with this international window. More entertaining than like CONCACAF, in my opinion, right now, CONMEBOL and Europe and whatnot. I really, really enjoyed watching Asian football here, and there's a lot of good storylines and great quality football on display here. So if you're not watching AFC, I highly, highly recommend you pick up the AFC games starting in October and moving onwards for the 2026 World Cup. Number two, depending on how this video goes, we are going to be doing more AFC content, especially in October and November and every single stretch of games afterwards. So if you guys want more AFC content from the Get Info podcast, make sure to subscribe now and then turn notifications on so that you know when those are released and you can be one of the first people to react and comment and like and view. I'm going to put timestamps on this video, so if you guys are interested in hearing my thoughts about a certain group or team or whatnot, make sure to scroll through and find your team or group down below. We're going to start with Group A. We're going to go team by team, and then we're going to go into Groups B and C afterwards. Starting with Group A, first to sixth goes Uzbekistan, Iran, United Arab Emirates, North Korea, Qatar, and Kyrgyzstan in that order, with Uzbekistan and Iran being up by 3 points on the UAE, and honestly, kind of deserved. I would definitely understand them being top two. It definitely is deserved. Uzbekistan first. We'll start off with them. They looked really interesting, is how I would put it. I really, really enjoyed their first game, and I thought that they played pretty well. They had a lot of good opportunities, and the fact that I only finished 1-0 was kind of, I wouldn't say undeserved per se, because I do think their opponent played really, really well. So the win, I think, was deserved on their part, but at the same time, it was really close. I think 1-0 for that game was definitely too close for comfort for Uzbekistan, but at the same time, I don't know if there should have been another result there. North Korea did miss one penalty, which could have drawn there, but Uzbekistan, like I said, they looked good, and I do think they have what it takes to maintain a top two position. At the very worst, a third or fourth. No, at the very worst, a third. But to be honest, I would assume they stay in one or two here. But that game was a little too close for comfort. I really hope that they do not keep that up in the coming games, because at some point you're going to falter. At some point they need to start finishing, and they did finish today well against Kyrgyzstan when they finished. I think the game finished 3-2, right? So Uzbekistan, I think, have what it takes to keep it up, but it's the consistency that's a big issue for me here. And Uzbekistan in games past has been rather interesting. Even before this tournament or the World Cup qualifiers, they have been on a really, really good streak in terms of winning games, and at least drawing games, unbeaten streak. I don't think they've lost a game in a year now, and I don't particularly see that happening anytime soon with the way this group is set up. But that's really down to them. I do think they have, like I said, they have what it takes to stay up, but it's just the little one things that could cause them to falter here and there. Overall, though, Uzbekistan, I think, fully deserves the way they play and the way they have been playing to be in the 2026 World Cup. And I do think they're going to be when it's all said and done, whether that is a automatic finish in the top two or third or fourth. I do think Uzbekistan probably will be in the mix there by the end of it, and I do hope they are, because they're a really good representation of this area of the world, and I think Uzbekistan has been on the rise for years now. They just haven't let it grow into anything solid, but I think this is exactly what they need right here. 2 wins, 6 points out of the first two. Really, really good from Uzbekistan. Moving on to second place, Iran, and another team with 6 points off after 2 games. Only 2 goal difference, but they've only won. I think both games are 1-0, right? So still a very good showing. And, Iran is one of the best teams in this entire third round. Out of all 18 of these teams, they're probably one of the top, at the very least, 3 or 4. So Iran being here is no surprise at all. I really, really enjoy how they play, and they created a lot of chances today in the game against the UAE, who are very much in form after that first game, which we'll talk about soon. But Iran, they just know how to get it done, don't they? They know how to get these wins. They know how to get the points, and that's all that really matters in the end. I like how Iran play. I know a lot of people blame the manager for a lot of their shortcomings in recent times, but I don't know how much is deserved, to be honest. And like I said, they were creating a lot of good chances today, and they could have won by more or not. I mean, it was a pretty closely contested game in bits and parts. But Iran, I think, looked very, very solid and have looked very, very solid. And I think to have gotten that win over the UAE, it is already a good sign for things to come in these games, because that not only gives you 3 points, but it takes away 3 points from a pretty good opponent in this group in the UAE, who a lot considered to be favorites for at least a third or fourth place finish, if not one or two, depending on how it goes. And after their first game, or whatever, we'll talk about a little bit. But Iran having won that game was very, 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 very important. And I do think, like I said, same with Uzbekistan. They are, for me, the clear favorites to finish top two right now for these first two games. I do think it's not going to change a whole lot in this way. I don't see them really faltering against the likes of North Korea or even Qatar or even Uzbekistan. I mean, I think Uzbekistan and Iran is going to be a really, really good game, and it could go either way. But I think Iran have the consistency and the ability to keep it going a little bit more, which could be a really good sign. So I think Iran, very, very good so far. Very much a team that you need to keep watching as the qualifiers go on, because they could falter, and that would be really, really interesting, but I don't think they're going to. I think they're a very entertaining team to watch. I think they're going to keep it up. And then moving on to third place, the United Arab Emirates, and I love watching this team. That first game against Qatar, I was watching it in the morning, and they were down 1-0, and then three unanswered goals to win the game. That was amazing. That was probably one of the best matches of the entire round so far, and it was awesome. It was awesome. I really do think they have what it takes to finish third place here, especially because the other teams in this group are Kyrgyzstan, Qatar, and North Korea. I don't see any of them really building the consistency and quality that the UAE has right now. So I do think the UAE has a really, really good shout to finish third. I really, like I said, enjoy watching them play, and if they keep it up, they could do a lot here. And I really want to see them play against Uzbekistan. I think it's going to be a really, really interesting game to see who gets the front foot there, because I feel like either team has a good chance of winning, which is kind of weird, obviously. But so UAE, very, very fun to watch. They've been ecstatic so far. The game against Iran, I think it's one game, whatever. I do think they have the quality to maintain good form throughout the next 8 games, and I really think they're going to, at the very least, if not get automatic qualification, move on to the next round. Absolutely. So keep an eye on them as well. Really, really, really entertaining team to watch, and one that I really enjoy watching. I'm going to keep an eye on them for sure myself. And then after the UAE, we have everybody's favorite country in the world, North Korea, sitting in 4th place after all this. I think is really impressive, I guess would be the word. Obviously, it's only after 2 games and they sit on 1 point. They could still finish in the bottom 2, but they looked solid. I mean, that game against Uzbekistan, they had chances, and they very well could finish in 3rd and 4th. And there's a chance that they will come to the USA to play World Cup football, which is really, really intriguing. But they looked fairly solid. Like they actually did come to play in this qualifiers, and I don't really think that they're a team that's a one and done. I really don't think so. They drew against Qatar today, and granted, Qatar have not had the best qualifiers so far, but to get 2-2, 2 goals scored with also a beautiful free kick in the rain. Absolutely phenomenal by North Korea. Only lost 1-0 to Uzbekistan. Like I said, they had a missed penalty, so they could have got a point from that too. North Korea, they're not a team that's just going to be a pushover, and I really, really enjoy that for the competition-wise for this group. There's a lot that's going to go into this. I think everybody's going to watch North Korea. I mean, obviously, it's North Korea. It's the spectacle of it all, right? But there is a chance that they pull something off here. And I would not be shocked if by the end of it, they're sitting in 4th place. For them to be sitting in 4th place, however, obviously that does mean that 2 teams will be below them. And I think Kyrgyzstan's going to be below them, but that also means Qatar is going to be below them. So the big thing with North Korea, obviously, is their consistency. If they can keep it up for the next 8 games, then great. I don't know if they can, though. I mean, it is North Korea, to be fair. They don't, we don't know anything about North Korea. We don't know what the preparation or the tactics, the training is like. So they very well could just fall off at some point. But there is a chance where they're involved in the end of it, at least in the playoff, to be playing in the 2026 World Cup. And I think that's amazing. And, for whatever North Korea is, whatever they stand for, in a footballing sense, this is absolutely awesome to watch. It's just great. So the next matches they do have are going to be against the UAE and Kyrgyzstan. The UAE is going to be an interesting game. I don't know if they're going to get points there, but at the same time, it's going to be in a month's time, right? So if they were to play them right now in the second game, it'd be a different story. But in that third game, after a month of a break, maybe either team, relaxes a little bit between then. And if the UAE does, North Korea has every opportunity to get 3 points, if not a point from that game. And even a point from the game would be awesome, because it takes away 2 from the UAE. So North Korea, definitely one to watch, another one to watch. I mean, this whole group has been amazing so far. It's been really, really good, and we still don't really know how at least the bottom 4 is going to finish. Like I said, I ran Uzbekistan into the top 2 for me, but even then, neither of them are still set. And by the time March comes, maybe we might be seeing something completely different. I think North Korea is going to be still in that mix, which is really good. They play Kyrgyzstan after, and then I think there's a good chance they can get points from there for both teams. I think it's going to be a really good game. But I do think that North Korea has the opportunity to be in this mix for as long as they can do, and that's that's really entertaining. I love that. After North Korea comes Qatar, and Qatar have been such an interesting team. And I know people have their opinions about Qatar and how the referees are with them or the federation is with them and whatnot, but they're sitting in fifth place after 2 games on 1 point with -2 goal difference. I think that says a lot, and I do believe they could still kick it into gear when it matters, and they could still finish in at least a playoff spot. But I really don't think they're going to be in the mix for the top two, and that should say a lot because I think a lot of people would consider them in the mix for the top two. They have consistently been at the top of Asian football for the past, I don't know, few years at the very least, 3-4 years, and these qualifiers to go this way for them, I think is really, really shocking. And I the fact that they might not make it to this World Cup with its expanded format with a lot more teams making it, I think is a really, really big sign of the decline of Qatar or more the progress of the rest of Asian football around them. They drew with North Korea, which I don't think as Qatar you really can afford to do that. You can't do that. I think they have to be beating North Korea here. So for them to do that is a really big shock. I mean, I know there was a lot of different factors in the game and whatnot, and a free kick goal, and the weather and the pitch and whatnot, but still, you also lost to the UAE, and they did not come to play in the second half. The UAE really, really started dominating the last 30 minutes of that game, and even that first goal where the attacker, did a fake shot and two Qatari players, went to ground to block it. I think it was just lazy defending. But in that particular moment, I think is really what showed for these two first games for them. And I don't think they can keep it up the way they're doing if they want to advance at all. They could, for at least at the very least fourth place, I think. I'm not going to say they're a lock, but it would be naive to count them out already. I just think they really need to kick it into gear. Their next game is against Kyrgyzstan. I think they could do it there because of the nature that Kyrgyzstan is, and they're the worst team in this group so far, at the very least. I think Qatar, if that is a game to do it, if there's a game to do it, it is that game. But afterwards, they play Iran, they play Uzbekistan, and then they play the UAE again. And I think it's going to look really, really hard for them. And, they're not too far behind. Obviously, there's 10 total games, so a lot can happen. You can determine how much out of 30 points you get. So a lot can happen here. I just don't know. It wasn't a good first 2 games for them. It wasn't a good sign. And I'm not saying that it's going to stay that way, but I think that's really going to be down to them. And we'll see what happens. I don't see it staying that way at all, but it could. They shouldn't have come into this round playing like this, what they did, and playing like that. And in this fashion and dropping points like this, it stays with you. It stays with you. And then we're going to move on to Kyrgyzstan right after that. Kyrgyzstan are the only team in this group without points, unfortunately. They did have 2 close games leading into this. I mean, they only lost 1-0 to Iran, and they lost 3-2 today to Uzbekistan. So there's a lot that could be done by Kyrgyzstan here. But in comparison to the rest of the teams in this group, I don't see much happening. I don't see them being able to be above the likes of North Korea or the UAE or Qatar as of right now. That could change, but I don't think they have the quality personally or the consistency to do so. And that's no shade to them. I mean, they're still a really solid team, and they've come this far, but they know where they're at. They played really well today, though, against Uzbekistan in the battle of the stands, and they played really, really well. And I think it's a good sign because Uzbekistan is not invincible. That game showed them they're not invincible, and that game also showed them that Kyrgyzstan are here to play. I just don't think it's going to amount to too much in the end. I think they're going to still have some really good performances like today, but there are some games where I don't see them winning. And those games you really, really need to be getting at least some points from. And so I don't think they're going to be in the mix in the end. But still a really good showing today. They should be proud of themselves and how they played against Uzbekistan because, again, Uzbekistan is a top team. Good effort for sure. I want to see some more of the same performances. And if they can, then, hey, we have a competition. We have a group here. But if not, I don't see them being in the top 4. Moving on to Group B in order, we got Jordan, South Korea, Iraq, Kuwait, Palestine, and Oman. And this one is a really, really interesting group. And this could go a lot of different ways. I think the top 3 teams all have 4 points, meaning they're very neck and neck right now. But by the end of it, they could go completely separate directions. But to start off with Jordan in number 1 is really, really good for Jordan in the first 2 games of this group. Their attack is just lights out. And today against Palestine, they were on it. They were lights out attack the whole way through and really deserved that win against Palestine. And then they dropped points against Kuwait. Kuwait played well. It was a decent game between both of them, but I really, really like how Jordan plays here. And I really, really think that Jordan, for me, is a top 2 contender at the very worst. It's them and South Korea right now for me. They have played exceptionally well, especially against Palestine. I think they have had really good games. They obviously have made some mistakes here and there, but I do think they have the consistency to play a similar way against a bunch of these teams, especially, the lesser teams, I guess you could say, just for lack of a better term. I do think they have the power to get consistent results here that would allow them to be either a top 2 or top 4 team here. So Jordan is a really, really interesting team to watch. I do think they're going to keep it up, but if not, then who knows? I'll talk a little bit more about who might fill that second place spot or third place spot after this, but really, really interesting so far. A lot to take in for Jordan, and they can go into October feeling really proud of themselves after this one to sit atop this group, which is not the easiest group, don't get me wrong. To sit atop this group with 4 points over the likes of South Korea, really, really good from Jordan. Be proud. To move on to South Korea, though, 4 points I think is a disappointment after this. It is without a doubt a disappointment after their first 2 games. They really, really should be sitting on 6 points. I think that's what is expected of them from themselves and fans around the world. And I think to not do that is really scary. It's really, really scary. Without Heung-min Sung, they'd be even worse off here. And South Korea has, on paper, in my opinion, the second best team in the AFC in Asia. And for them to not be consistently considered a top 2 team is really, really scary because they should be doing this, and they shouldn't be sitting in second place after this round, after this month of games. They should be sitting atop. 6 points. You can't be dropping points to Palestine at home. Don't forget, at home, when the likes of Japan are, knocking the socks off teams like China and Bahrain, South Korea needs to get it into gear. And if they don't, I think it's going to be really, really interesting how this group pans out. They struggle a lot with certain games. The defense, and they have really, really good defenders. They struggle a lot with some defensive actions here. And without the likes of Heung-min Sung or Hwang Hee-chang up top, South Korea looks a worse team by far. By far. The attack carries them. Heung-min Sung carries them. And that shouldn't be how it is. They need to be a little bit more consistent here. And sitting in second place is still good, still top 2, and you still can go a long ways from here, but I still think you should be disappointed. A lot of teams are sitting in the top 2 and should be proud of what they've done. Like Jordan on 4 points, but South Korea, I think, should go into October feeling disappointed and need to make up for it because 4 points against Palestine, it doesn't look good. It doesn't make you look good at all. I do think they're still gonna at the very worst finish top 3. I finished top 3, but top 2 is looking a little bit questionable. It's still 2 out of 10 games. I don't want to be too extreme here, but they need to kick it into gear sooner than later. You don't want to finish October through 4 games looking the exact same way as you did this month, and then afterwards you don't know where you're going to go from there, because a lot of these teams have the potential to get some points and get a leg up over South Korea. Jordan, I think, has all the potential to run away with it. That is their next game, is South Korea Jordan, and that's going to be an absolute spectacle in October. I'm really looking forward to that game. But the fact that I don't know of South Korea being a favorite against Jordan really says a lot for me personally. That's why I do think they need to kick it into gear, because South Korea should be steamrolling this group, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that as in a way to discredit the rest of the group, because it is very, very good, but South Korea should be the number 1 here. And the fact that they're not, you have to start asking questions after this. So afterwards, South Korea in third place is Iraq, and sitting on 4 points as well. Really, really good from Iraq. They play Palestine next, and they've looked fairly decent. I don't know if they have the ability to stay in to fight for top 2 as it gets later on into the season, but who knows? They could be here. They got a result against Oman, which was a really, really good result after a pretty early header. And then they didn't get the result against Kuwait. Kuwait is a very solid team, but I do think Iraq would get one up on them in the next leg and the next time they play each other. So I think Iraq here, they should feel proud. Honestly, they should feel proud because they're tied with first on points at the very least, and they're sitting in third. You can go a lot of ways here. You can go way up or you can go way down. So I think Iraq should be proud of their September. They had some good games, had some good performances. As long as they keep up that consistency, at the very worst, we're seeing them finish top 4. And I think that's what they're going to do. I think that there's the other 2 or 3 teams in Kuwait, Palestine, and Oman. I wouldn't say that they're better than Iraq. I don't think those 3 teams in particular have the potential to get a leg up on Iraq over time. Maybe Kuwait, maybe Oman. I don't know about Palestine. It's a big maybe. Iraq, out of those 4, though, are my number 1 to finish at the highest, maybe third place there. But it's up to them to keep the consistency. I do think they can do it, though. They have shown the results. They have shown the capabilities of being able to do it. I think they're going to be in that top 4 mix for sure. Moving on into 4th place is Kuwait. And Kuwait are an interesting team for me. They got 2 draws against two really big opponents in this group in Jordan and Iraq. And especially with Jordan, that's a really, really good draw to get. And against Iraq, it also is a really, really good draw to get. But what is really interesting with this team for me is it's just draws, right? And that's good. Don't get me wrong, it takes points away from the other teams, but I think they need to they need to start scoring the ball a little bit more, and they need to take their opportunities when they're playing the likes of Oman and Palestine to win those games and win them big. Kuwait, you can't be drawing every game and expect to move forward. I mean, even if they did, they might be able to finish out of this group, but I need a little bit more from Kuwait. They have played really, really good, and I might get some flack for that. But Kuwait, I think, have the potential to finish top four without a doubt over the likes of Palestine and Oman. I do think they need to kick it into gears a little bit more though, but they're easing into it. It's Kuwait, like I said, it's Kuwait. Everybody knows how they are, and especially against they have good results, but they also have pretty bad results here and there. And if you're not winning against teams like these, it's gonna be really hard to move a lot forward. So Kuwait's still very, very solid. You should still have some pride for having two draws after this, especially against two top opponents. Very, very good. To move on to Palestine though, I mean, Palestine had a great, great draw against South Korea and could have won it. They had that 1-on-1 towards the end. They could have won that game. I think a lot of what Palestine is here is story, and that's great because I love stories. Who doesn't love a story in football? I really want Palestine to make that very worst fourth place just to get a sniff of the next round of maybe the World Cup, because obviously everybody knows what's going on. The country needs this, and I do think it's possible. I do think they have a chance of making it out of this group. It's just keeping the consistency up and the passion up is what matters to me more. I do think they are a better team than Kuwait and Oman on paper, but it's, paper only takes you so far, obviously. I think Oman might be a little bit better than Palestine, but I think that game is going to be really, really good. I think Palestine could get something from that game, but, keep up these big upsets is all that matters. Get a result against Iraq, get a result against, Oman, like I said, and there is, there's possibility there. There's possibility from Palestine. I really like Palestine. Obviously, I love Palestine. I mean, it's going to be really fun to watch them moving forward. I think you just have to have more of those moments is all it is. More of those magical moments to get these results here, because I feel like kind of what you need. I think they really, really could get. And then sitting in last place of this group is Oman, and with 0 points like Kyrgyzstan. And Oman is such a weird team for me in this group just because they have the potential to get some results, but at the same time, they do struggle here and there. They do struggle with games against certain opponents. I mean, you just look at their past results even before this tournament. I mean, they drew with Kyrgyzstan. They had wins against the likes of Malaysia and Chinese Taipei, who aren't the biggest competitions, but they drew with Kyrgyzstan again, drew with Thailand, lost to Saudi Arabia. They beat the UAE, but there are some results here that I just don't have a lot of faith in Oman. And once they get into gear, I mean, they're going to run with it, absolutely, for sure. But I think it's getting into gear is the biggest issue. After this break, they play against Kuwait, which I do think is going to be a great game, and it's going to be a fairly even game, one that Oman could get 1 or 3 points from. And then they play Jordan after. That game's going to be a little hard, I think, for them. Oman are one of those teams where you never know. I don't know what's going to happen with them after this. If I'm being well and truly honest, I don't know what's going to happen with them. There's a lot of different ways they can go. They can maintain this poor form moving forward in the next 2 games, or they can move beyond this and get at least a few points starting in October. But I'm not quite sure. Let me know your thoughts about Oman so far after those 2 games and what they could do afterwards. If you think I'm completely wrong, tell me in the comments down below, absolutely. But it's just it's questionable from Oman. I think they really needed to get at the very least a point from these games. And granted, they played Iraq, they played South Korea, who are 2 great teams, and South Korea, scored 3 goals on them. They only lost 1-0 to Iraq and off a header, off a set piece. So Oman can do it. It's just a matter of doing it. To round off the video here, we got to finish with Group C. And Group C has been probably the most entertaining group so far of this entire round. I mean, there have been so many really good results, a lot of good storylines here. So we're going to talk about it. From 1st through 6th, Japan in 1st, over 1 million first. Saudi Arabia in 2nd, Bahrain in 3rd, Indonesia in 4th, Australia in 5th, and China in 6th. Let's start with Japan, given the qualification now. I mean, 12 goal difference after 2 games with a 7-0 win and a 5-0 win. I mean, granted, 1 game was against China, and China's not making it out of this group by any means. The other game was against Bahrain, and Bahrain are very solid and are capable of getting good results. But 5 goals on them is insane. Japan are without a doubt going to finish top of this group. I mean, there's no way they don't. Especially because the other teams I don't think have shown any semblance of any similarity of quality to Japan. Japan I think is going to be finishing number 1. I don't think you can argue against that. They have absolutely dominated so far in these 2 games. I don't think it's going to stop. They play Saudi Arabia next, we'll talk about right now. But they play against them next, and I think they're still overwhelming favorites. It's looking good for Japan. If you're a Japan fan, I don't think you should be really worried about them finishing in a qualification spot or not. Japan is going to be there no matter what. They will be there no matter what. Like I said, 2 great results. They play against Saudi Arabia and Australia, and I still think they're going to get 6 points from those 2 games. So keep it on Japan. You don't really have to, honestly. Just assume that they're going to win. They probably will. They have looked lights out. At this rate, I see them winning all 10 games, to be honest. Like, I'm probably gonna be proven wrong. That's gonna be really hard to do, but they looked phenomenal. They looked really, really, really good. We're gonna move on to Saudi Arabia next, and Saudi Arabia are such an interesting team, and they don't really possess the capability of doing more than what they've done so far. They haven't looked that great. I'm gonna be honest, they have not looked that great. And under Mancini, I feel like they haven't really looked great even before this round. But like that first game against Indonesia, they shouldn't be drawing against Indonesia at home. There was not much fan support in the stadium. Indonesia was louder, and as a result, I'm not saying it was just down to this, but Indonesia had opportunities to win it. And Saudi Arabia did too, but Saudi, they missed a penalty. And the Indonesian goalkeeper was able to save it, and he was the hero, and it finished 1-1. And I just don't think you should be dropping points to Indonesia. I love Indonesia. Don't get me wrong. Once I get to Indonesia, I'm going to be raving about them, but I don't think Saudi Arabia should be dropping points in games like that. And the fact that they are is really, really scary. The fact that they only beat China 2-1 before this, I was, I saw Jack from Deadball TV, his tweet saying that if they don't beat China, then Mancini's got to go. And I think even the fact that there was a doubt there, I think Mancini's got to go pretty soon. I really do think after this group, Saudi Arabia is going to question Mancini's leadership, and I would not be surprised if they get rid of him after this, just because he hasn't really made them look good. He has not. I don't have the most hope in them because of the other teams. I think they still could finish second or third, maybe, but at the same time, it's not the most confident in them. It's more by a default thing. So that should be really surprising to them, because Saudi Arabia, I think, has been at the forefront of the sport for years now in Asia, and I think it's kind of faltering a little bit, and you can tell in this group, and it makes it look kind of really, really bad for Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, they still could kick it into gear. There's still a lot more games to be played. I think they have the opportunity to pull something from these games, without a doubt, and maybe by the end of these 10 games they look a lot better and they qualify for the World Cup, and all is well. I just don't know what's going to happen. As of right now, it doesn't look like it's trending that way. And then number 3 is Bahrain, who sit here on 3 points, and that's because they beat Australia at home in Australia. And wow, wow, they still have a -4 goal difference, but because that's from the Japan game. But Bahrain, I mean, come on, they at this point, at this rate, I think they still could they could finish top 3 or 4, maybe top 4. Bahrain looked very, very solid that game against Australia. I mean, I think a lot of it was Australia's fault, but they still were able to score a goal on them and didn't allow a goal. And I think Bahrain have the opportunity to really, really be a force to reckon with in this group. They're not one of the bigger names. They're not one of the more talked about names when you have the likes of Japan, Saudi, and Indonesia and Australia and whatnot. But I think they're quietly going to sneak into that 4th place spot at the very worst. Moving on to Indonesia, though. I am fully rooting for Indonesia here. I think a lot of people are. I obviously root for the Philippines because I'm Filipino, but they are not in this round of the qualifiers. As a result, Indonesia is my team, because Indonesia should be everybody's team. 2 draws to start off this group against the likes of Australia and Saudi Arabia, who before this round were 2 of the favorites to finish in the top 3. And I think Saudi still are, but Australia have looked really poor. But Indonesia, to get 2 draws there is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. They had the chance to win both games too. They could have won both games, in particular the game against Saudi Arabia. But this is exactly how they kind of wanted these to go. It's okay that they haven't gotten a win yet. What matters more is they haven't lost, and they've gotten something from both games. And not only have they gotten something, they've pulled something away from the other teams in doing so. Indonesia look really, really fun so far. And they have, I mean, this Indonesia team is going to be one of those streets we'll never forget kind of stories in the future, I think. They've been on a come up for years now. It is finally amounting to something on the highest level, and I do think the possibility of Indonesia making it into the 2026 World Cup is quite possible. It's quite possible, and I really, really enjoy that. I think a lot of people want that. Nobody really hates Indonesia, I feel like, from what I can gather, at least. And it's possible. The next game to play against is Bahrain, and I do think it's two somewhat informed teams playing against each other. They're going to need, I wouldn't say they need some luck to get past Bahrain, but it's going to be a good game. I mean, they need everything to go their way here, and I do think Indonesia really need to start scoring more goals is the biggest thing. And once they get that going too, I think there's not much that they can not rely upon. I mean, these games they could be getting results from. They play Bahrain and then they play China after that, and that game against China is absolutely a game where you should be getting 3 points from. And I think they could very well leave October with 6 more points, finishing on 8 points after that. But one of those games I feel like you have to win. Draws can only take you so far, like I talked about earlier. One of these games you absolutely have to win, and I think they're going to. I really think they're going to get some points, something from those two games. Indonesia, we're rooting for you. If you're an Indonesian fan, let us know in the comments down below, because obviously we want them to be in the 2026 World Cup, because that would be absolutely amazing. Then moving on to Australia. Well, Australia, man, like what? How are you sitting in fifth place after the first two games on 1 point? On 1 point, disappointing by far. The way the Socceroos play is just not it. They play very defensively. There's no attacking creativity whatsoever. There's a reason they're sitting in fifth place. I don't know if they fully deserve to be anything higher. And that's really disappointing, because Australia have been one of the teams in the AFC, at least, that have been involved in world football over the past decade or two. And for them to be sitting at 5 points here, only above China, it's really, really telling of what's going on. They played really well going into this round, where in the first two rounds of the qualifiers. I don't know why they faltered so much, but they play without any prowess or creativity or whatsoever. And I think they really, really need to get that going if they want any chance of making it out of this group. I obviously I think they're really still going to be in the race for a third and fourth. I don't think it's way too early to count them out now, because they are a very, very good team, a very, very good team. But the fact that you're drawing with Indonesia, who I think is like 110 places below you in the rankings, they shouldn't be doing that at this point. They have yet to score a goal in these qualifiers, and I think that's a big thing too. They lost at home to Bahrain in Australia, and that's a shocker, and they shouldn't be doing that. So really, really important to watch Australia next. They play China in the next game, and battle fifth and sixth. I think even despite Australia's shortcomings so far, Australia should be beating China. Well, I'll talk about China in a little bit, but Australia, they need to get 3 points from that, and then they play Japan, Saudi after that. It's going to be hard. I mean, I think it's going to be really, really hard, and I really think that they wish that within these first two games they got it going, because it's going to be really, really hard to get it going after once October starts. I think it's going to be really, really hard, because you're playing the likes of Japan and Saudi. You're playing Bahrain and Indonesia after. Like, if they don't get it going because of this China game, I really don't see them having a chance of pulling anything out of this group. And that's really shocking. I do think that, as Australia, they should expect themselves to be involved in the top, leagues and games of world football. And the fact that they're not content, but the fact that they've settled into this spot is really, really surprising and really scary if you're a Socceroos fan, I'm sure. It's just time to kick it into gear. And then we're going to talk about China real quick. What is there to say other than China's not making out of this group? They have -8 goal difference after two games. They scored 1 goal. They conceded 7 to their biggest rivals in Japan, not only football-wise, but like world history-wise. It's just embarrassing so far. Those two first games were embarrassing. And, China's one of those teams where we had those conversations years past of, why aren't they a better team? And they're such a big country, and it's like the USA idea but worse. Why aren't they at the top of Asian football? And I think we're past this conversation now. We're moving on, because this is just it's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. And they're playing Australia next, and I don't even think they have a chance against Australia. And when you compare China to the rest of these teams, I don't think they have a chance at all. Even the likes of Indonesia, even Bahrain, I don't really think they have much of a chance at all. So China, sixth place, I don't think they're going to move far from it as we move forward. So you don't have to worry about that low on the table. But yeah, those are my opinions on the 3 groups of the AFC World Cup qualifiers in September. Those games, if you guys are still watching, I appreciate it. Make sure to like the video if you did like it. We're going to do more content, like I said, for October and November. So if you guys want more of those, make sure to subscribe now. And yeah, it's going to be it. Let me know your comments and ideas in the comment section down below, because I'm going to respond to as much as I can. Otherwise, hopefully we'll see you guys in October, or if you guys want to watch any of our other videos, we would heavily, heavily appreciate that. And yeah, there we go. Take it easy, guys.